Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Assurance Committee of HEIW. Welcome particularly to our new Director of Education Strategy and Transformation, Ian Matheson, attending as an observer. And also a welcome to our new County Fraud Manager. Good to have you with us. Are there any apologies for absence?
Sorry, just had a got on and conference what it was.
Thank you. Any other apologies? Any declarations of interest relevant to the business before this meeting which have not already been declared? No? Thank you. We have before us the draft minutes of the last meeting of the Audit and Assurance Committee held on the 24th of June and the 4th of July. You've had the opportunity to review these in the pack. Are there any matters of accuracy to be addressed?
Sure, just one on the minutes of the 4th of July, page 4, as a reference there, we discussed about the asset register, and the fourth paragraph says there's 100 assets, under 100 assets on there. I think at that point we were talking about assets held off-site. They're actually more than that, but there's 63 exhaustive matters off-site, but there's many more. We could get laptops and such like on there, but that just refers to the off-site assets, which was the high risk items.
So we just need to clarify that. Any other points of accuracy? So we have an action log relating to these minutes, Gabby. Any points relating to the action log? John?
Sure. Can I just note the action that says John Cameron and the board secretary, further discussions regarding the board assurance noted there as complete, which is accurate. I just wonder on occasions whether it would be helpful, particularly the nature of this committee, that we give a narrative, but that was a very positive meeting. Within that meeting, also the senior governance officer was present, where we looked at ways in which we can improve our governance structure and the board assurance framework. We reviewed a number of options. We've agreed which one would probably be a better way of further developing our existing board assurance framework. And that is then going to be tabled as part of a board development following discussion with the executive board. That was my understanding of the meeting. That's what I'm expecting to happen, which was reassuring for me. And I think, as a public document, it'd be useful for public to see that.
That's a correct something that we had. I said in the context of it's quite a great amount.
What was completed was the holding of the meeting, but there is work.
And it's positive work.
Yes, that's really helpful. Thank you, John. Any other points relating to the action log?
Yeah, just to update on the action around the counter fraud e-learning. I know we've effectively completed the action that was identified in the minutes, but just to say that those directorate team meetings, we have a number in the diary now. So I think this one scheduled later in October, one in November. I can't remember all the dates, but the aim is to have those directorate meetings taking place over the next few months, and then we'll do some additional sessions after that. Obviously, people who attend those meetings, then we'll have an interactive session around counter fraud awareness, which we think is possibly better than just taking part in an e-learning module. And those people who attend and take part will be recorded on the SR. So we should have a means of then being able to report back on take of the
That is good news, and I think it will take a lot of insurance from that. I've had concern about being able to evidence the level of awareness. So good to hear that it's been addressed. Any other points relating to the action log? No? In which case, are there any matters arising from the minutes other than those set out in the action? No? Okay. So we have approved the minutes and addressed the matters. We now move on to part 2 of the agenda, which is matters for consideration, and to agenda item 2.1, internal audit. And over to you, Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just derive a few points from the progress report. So generally, we're making good progress across the plan. A couple of reviews on the agenda today. Hope to have a couple more. However, there's a number of reasons why they're not on the agenda today, which is set out in table 2. I guess the main one is the single lead employer, and this was a call that we've had a lot of conversation about systematic reviews in the past, and so we've coordinated with our colleagues in the internal shared services who have done this work at the same time around single lead employer. So we're in that process of making sure that the 2 reports align so we can tell that sort of what's the great story, which is why it's not on the agenda today. A couple of other things to note is that I'm introducing and putting together this plan. You'll know this, I will talk about being a risk-based plan and needs to be flexible. So there are a couple of changes to the programme. And we've got 2 pieces of work we've brought online, and which will mean that there are a couple of pieces which will push into next year's planning. Probably the other thing I would say is, in terms of performance, you'll see that of the 3 performance metrics we regularly report back to committee, there is that one that's shown as red. Really, it looks quite stark, but it's really down to the number of reviews that we've got through over the last. It's 50% showing 1 out of 2. Final thing to mention is around, there's a couple of paragraphs in the progress report around internal audit standards, which become applicable from the beginning of January 2025. We are working through the sort of what impact that will have on us and organisations that we work with. Hopefully bringing paper back to the next which will set out a bit more thinking. It's the sort of key things I was going to say, so happy to.
Thank you. I mean, the single lead employer, I think we are keen to have that view of the end-to-end process. And so happy that you actually are making sure that we get that due course. And the issue around the report turnaround, I hear what you say in relation to how it relates to one of the audits, not seeing the expected turnaround time. But clearly we would expect that going forward, we meet this turnaround time unless it's absolutely unlikely. Any questions, comments?
Check, can I just ask, I think you partly answered the question, but it's really the new global internal audit standards.
Yeah.
We know that the 4.4 that there is preliminary work to understand the impact. In terms of that impact, I'm sure that we are able to appropriately meet these standards. How is the work progressing? Are there any alerts that we should be aware of, or questions that we should be aware of to bring the students from.
I guess probably not all of those are concerns, but it's around there's certainly some initial thinking around follow-up work, and it might be a bit more prescriptive. So where ordinarily in the past we followed on limited assurance reports minimally, and we'll do a little bit of testing around the audit tracker that comes to this committee. There might be a more prescriptive piece of work around that, further on the work development. I don't foresee any huge differences from the work we're doing at the moment. So we were externally quality assessed in 2023. Separately, we've got a plant, and we had the top marks for that. And I don't think there's going to be a huge change to the city for us.
Questions on the progress report? No. Which I guess we move on to the internal audit reports and IR35 follow-up.
Morning, everyone. So the first of our two reports today is the IR35 follow-up report. The original report was issued in December 2023 and is in follow-up this year because it was given a limited issuance opinion rating. The original report had 8 recommendations in total, 5 high priority and 3 medium priority. Our follow-up has confirmed that good progress has been made in line with the agreed management actions. There's still some work to do to improve the quality of the IR35 central record. And then once that's been done, that will help enable reporting. So as a result of our testing, 1 recommendation with respect to reporting is to be carried forward. And a further recommendation has been raised in respect of the quality of the data in the spreadsheet record. But overall, the improvements resulted in a reasonable issues rating. Same work, questions, that was it.
Questions, colleagues? John?
Chair, this may be tended from a position of ignorance, so please forgive me if that's the case. I've got a reasonable understanding of the process. We're a relatively small organisation. I see what the findings are showing. I read the management response. And I don't understand why this is such a big issue and taking so much time. It refers in one part to capacity within the digital team. This is the matter of months in some time now where we still passionately implemented. So is there something that I'm missing as to why this is so protracted?
So there's probably a couple of things. I mean, it's quite a complex area for people who are non-experts to understand. So part of our focus has been on trying to train people who are, if you like, at sharp edge in terms of dealing with a lot of these requests. And so they have that basic understanding of how to use the employment tool and assess people for IR35. I think the issue around digital and data capacity is one that we've seen across a number of areas of work that there are issues, and they've had to prioritise their work. And what it means is we have to, at the moment, we've effectively had to come up with a workaround that information together centrally. An ideal situation is to have that digital solution centrally. So at the moment, that's what we're trying to do. Is almost have a bit more of a manual workaround to pull that information together. So that's why I think internal audit being able to come in and say it's okay. I mean, I would say at the moment it's satisfactory, but there's more work to do, and this is an area where we need to keep quite a sharp focus on, because I think there are a number of areas where we use people and contract with people in a way that they may fall within IR35. That could change over time depending on the nature of the business. But it's one of those areas we've got to keep constant focus on.
Just helpful from people. That being the case, when can we expect a timeline around that then? So that this is not the current status that it's receiving from the internal audit.
Matthew would like to come perhaps and help us with those?
Perhaps not that question. Yes, but so unfortunately, John, we have had some significant absence, long-term absence in the team who do the work on the R35 project. So we've eventually had people off for about 6 to 9 months in total, which is a massive impact on the ability to deliver. We've used external contracting to sort of have a core contract in place to backfill some of the resource challenges, but that's quite limited social financial constraints, and that's been prioritised with some of the high priority CP deliverables as well. So I think in terms of timescales, I would probably envisage that go to revisit the R35 work in the next time to cycles. So it's quite a time off at the moment. That's it's really challenging resource skills.
Yes, I think I recall this coming to papers when this was the first board of the IR, because obviously we deal with that financial and legal compliance issue. So I suppose building on what you said, John, I do think that this committee needs to be more sure around the key milestones here, because taking a point around the situation of digital, taking a step back from the HR checking point, is these are some of the pre-employment checks that can be done manually as well as sort of digitally. And I do feel as if we need to give it a little bit more credence as to what is going on, because my fear is that, you know, this is a legal requirement, and is there any financial impact because we're not dealing with it? And potentially that can be quite big. So I do feel that we need to have some sort of feedback to ensure us with that.
Absolutely. This is, I guess, black and white, it is what's happening here, but there's been a huge amount of work on the ground. The manual checks are done. This is about collecting the data centrally, which the database will do. What has happened is, as we've brought more people on board, and the engagement has been fantastic across departments, we're actually finding that the solution we had initially doesn't work for everyone. So that has delayed this idea in terms of that. So this is black and white, but the checks are being done, and we've had some training sessions. There was two very full sessions in that. So I think across organisation, people are thinking about the checks. You know, that is a manual process on the HMRC website. It is having the recording bit, which is being picked up here. And then afterwards, the finance team need to do the confirmation that is being done. So those checks will start by the end of the month. So we will pick up what Ken's team were previously doing, review what's going on, and target if we need to pick on particular teams. I think the nature of HAW is we do use these type of suppliers a lot, and we need to do those checks, which is probably why it's a potential issue with maybe different other organisations. So there's a lot going on in the background. I don't know. Perhaps at the next committee we could update where it's on the audit blog anyway, so we get an update there. But perhaps that would be useful to update with the progress of the.
Because we've got September 24 there, but we have some of the target dates as well for pieces of work. We're on track.
Yeah, unfortunately, as more people have joined it has created the additional issues. So I think we have slipped on those, but we will try to get to the next as part of the track.
That's good. So we're in a better place than we were. We can take reasonable assurance as a result of the law, but we're not yet where we want to be on this. And so I think colleagues really need to keep an eye on this, and in particular on the automation via a database product in due course. It'd be good to have a clearer timeline where we can on that. And once we have that, I think we will be in a much better place. However, we can take some comfort from the fact that using the manual process and these spreadsheets, I'm always nervous when people rely on spreadsheets because they can be structured accidentally. But that process will actually clarify what's needed from the database. So we're not using time will help us with the future design. So thank you. I think we can take assurance that we are in a much better place and keep our eyes on and see that we get to the correct place in future. Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to managing change of independent members.
Okay, yeah. So our second report today is managing change in independent members. As we all know, independent members that are appointed by the Welsh Government. So the focus on our audit was the induction process and the ongoing support provided to the members. The overall conclusion from our work was that this is well managed. The main finding being the need to provide members with diversity training now that usually the course previously provided by Welsh Government has stopped. We had 3 recommendations in total, 1 medium and 2 low priority. The overall opinion rating is substantial assurance. Any questions or comments?
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments?
Let me just make one comment. So I refer to 2.820, where it notes as part of the audit that the buddy system, for example, is not being implemented. But to give credit, once the buddy system may not be there are many other systems that this report does refer to, and it obviously has not been highlighted, that we adopt as IMs informally. So, for example, before the Slippery's meeting, there was a meeting of budgeting. We meet regularly in terms of informal support. So, whilst it's referred to as there's no budget system, that's probably strictly correct. But there are other methods that are not noted in this report that I feel comfortable about, and I think that's important for the record.
Do you have a substantial assurance from what is in the report and the additional matters that you referred to? I think give us even more assurance that new members of this board are appropriately and thoroughly inducted. So thank you for that. So colleagues, we note the internal audit progress report for assurance. We note the IR35 employment status checks followed internal report reasonable assurance. But we also note the ongoing interest of this committee in moving eventually to substantial assurance. And we note the managing change of independent members' internal audit. Thank you for that. We now move on to audit reports, and Andrew, can I invite you to present the progress report?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we've included the in the update to then changes to our sort of timing of the programme. But ultimately, financial audit work is completed, so there won't be any sort of significant change until we start the next half year. We over the spring time risk assessment to involve the plan and show the plan as a sort of suitable audit committee prior to the accounts. Ideally, we're looking with financial audit to try to bring that forward, but that's something which we sort of shifted off because we introduced a new standard. Our timing across the whole Welsh sort of went out by about 6 weeks. We're trying to bring that up in that position. In terms of then the performance audit programme, we've got 4 main areas of work. We've got financial efficiencies, which is on the agenda today, a structured assessment work, which is part of our routine government work, and that's ongoing at the moment. And then we've got 2 areas of review, which we're looking to start probably around December to January time. So one of those is a deep dive on digital investment. It's a mandated review, which basically means we're going to be undertaking across all 12 statutory health bodies in Wales. And then the other review we have is the local, so specific to HRW, which is focused on value for money from education commissioning. So that will be scoping probably starting in November time. Beyond that, I just wanted to highlight, and it isn't in the update, that we undertook a programme of work, again mandated across all 12 health bodies of workforce planning. So this was something I think we reported in the autumn last year for APW, and we've subsequently undertaken reviews across the remaining bodies across Wales. We also published an NHS data briefing on workforce, and what we're going to do now is basically summarise the messages from that. And we've undertaken a bit of additional national work, particularly looking at things like the National Workforce Implementation Plan. And we're looking to report that it will be to Welsh Government probably in the next 2 to 3 months. We'll go through clearance in advance of that and involve HPW as part of the programme. And then finally on there, and I haven't again included it into the update because it's sort of past, but we've just gone through a consultation. So every year we're legally required to undertake a consultation with local authorities, community rather than sort of wider NHS bodies on our fee rates and fee scales for the coming year. So that's gone through consultation, and we're now receiving any comments back and looking at that. If you remember last year, because of the changing in standards, we had quite a large uplift, and that'll be this year. The proposal is 1.8%, so it's below inflation, and hopefully it will be sort of agreeable. That's my thank you.
Any questions from you?
That's what it should.
No, please do.
So, there are many positives within this report, which it was good to read. My first question relates to section 9. And this is in relation to in terms of the cost drivers, organisational cost determined by treatment places, etc., and represents the pay driver within the organisation represents 8% of our budget. My question then is, how do these statistics?
I think we're on the next one.
Don't worry.
Hold the thought. Hold the thought. I have a question on timing and in relation to 2 matters. One is the audit of accounts. How much do you think you're going to be able to pull back on the delivery related to the audit of accounts?
I believe it's about financial audit colleagues, and I think they're looking around 2 to 3 weeks. I don't think it's going to be much more than that. It does depend on the timing of the wider programme as well, because the finite resource, and of course, we're dealing with the accounts across the whole of NHS Wales. So that being my expectation, but I know Helen will agree that with Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a discussion across NHS Wales and with Audit Wales around obviously trying to rotate about 2 weeks. And in addition to that, we've had discussions locally with Matthew about what sort of interim audit work we can do earlier in the year. The idea being that takes a little bit of pressure off the workload at the end of the year. So we've identified a few areas where potentially we can do some more interim audit work probably around sort of February time.
Thank you, that's helpful. And the other timing questions around the structured assessments. This committee doesn't meet again until February. So is it likely to go straight to the board?
That was something we discussed when I met with David earlier this week. And I think if we can get it to the board, that would be ideal. I think it's the end of November, so that would be.
It's November. I have a September process where it's not with the chase.
Right, okay, so that's what we're going to aim for. If it's not going to be that time, then it will be February committee, but we'll aim for the board.
On the January board, I guess. Okay. Thank you, that's helpful. So that's the progress report. I think we have your colleague with us, Jeff Brown, who's going to present the review of costing improvement arrangements. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Bore ar pawb. So thanks, thanks for the opportunity to present the sort of findings from our work on HIW's cost improvement arrangements. It's probably worth noting that the sort of focus for the work was on 23-24 year-end position. However, we also looked at, I guess, areas that needed to be improved for strengthening the 24-25 position and beyond. So the main focus is 23-24, but there was a view to 24-25. In terms of other general points, the work's been undertaken across all NHS bodies. However, for the trusts and authorities, we modified the approach so that there's a slightly different expectation from Welsh Government in terms of saving requirements and cost improvements, and we tried to reflect that in the work that we undertook at the various bodies. The second just general point is that in Appendix 1, we've got a list of all the things that we did in terms of our approach, which is, I guess, fairly standard in terms of reviewing documents, interviewing officers, etc. And the final point really is that on the general point, is that we've had the report agreed with yourselves for factual accuracy and tone. So, Chair, can I assume that members have had an opportunity to read the report? So I was only going to focus on some of the sort of high-level messages, if that's okay.
That's fine, thank you. We have read it.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on, in terms of the overall conclusion, which I guess is relatively positive, we set that out in paragraph 7, and we state that HIW has sound arrangements for identifying, delivering and monitoring cost improvement opportunities. But then we reflected that actually in drawing this conclusion, we acknowledge that the organisation's scope to secure cost improvement is largely determined by the volume of training places that it needs to commission on behalf of NHS Wales. So that's the overall summary. The report then, as you'll have seen, is divided into sort of 3 primary areas of focus, one being on the identification, the second on the delivery, and the third on monitoring and oversight of cost improvements. And I just want to pick out 1 or 2 points from each of those in terms of a summary. So in terms of the identification of cost improvements, which is on paragraphs 9 to 11, first of all, we felt that you had a good understanding of what's driving costs within the business. Clearly, the majority of that is through the training and costs identified in your education and training plan. We also reflected on the fact that as a strategic enabler to workforce for the NHS, actually, the work that HIW are doing to develop, workforce data, workforce models, once those have become fully embedded, will further support the NHS to identify potential efficiencies around its sort of wider workforce. So those are the 2 points I would draw out. Clearly, there are others within those paragraphs. In terms of the second area, which is the delivery of cost improvements, so that's paragraphs 12 to 16. So we reflected, I guess, that you were in a sort of very difficult and challenging position at the latter part of 23-24 and the early part of this year due to wider significant financial pressures across the NHS, which ultimately resulted in you needing to resubmit your 24-25 education and training plan, and then that had several impacts. The first of which was a reduction in the overall level of planned commissioned training places, and the second, I guess, was on on HIW's ability to effectively engage with its sort of key stakeholders around that changed plan. So that was the first point. We did also reflect that actually going forward more positively, there's been a recognition that having a more collaborative planning approach between Welsh Government and yourselves, is going to improve those sort of relationships, and we understand that's already happening. So that's the sort of second part of the report, and then the final part was around monitoring and oversight of cost improvement, which is paragraph 17 to 19. Again, very positive here. We found that your approach to monitoring and oversight it was good, had a robust approach, regular financial reporting and engagement from both the board and ECQC. and good visibility and understanding of the sort of key financial risks. So in terms of the next steps, you'll have noted that we didn't identify any specific audit recommendations, but as you read through the report, we've highlighted a couple of issues which I think from our perspective, what we want to do is keep those under assessment as part of the sort of wider work that we're doing as part of our structured assessment work, which is currently underway. So, you know, we've got one eye to the issues that we identified, and that will feed through into the work that we're doing on our structured assessment. So, Chair, appreciate that was a sort of whistle-stop tour of the report. Very happy to take any questions. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Colleagues, questions? I think you had one, John.
So apologies, colleagues. My enthusiasm for the report gets the better of me sometimes. So I apologise. My two questions, if I may. One of them relates to the benchmarking that we're undertaking in terms of our costs, where there's potential savings against other similar organisations across the UK. And it says in the report that we are looking at that. So do we have any data at the moment as to our percentage breakdowns and where we're likely to get cost savings compared to other organisations of similar nature?
Yeah, so we've started to do that work. So we started to break down our costs and look at them. Trying to find relevant benchmarking data is quite difficult. So I suppose some of the obvious comparators will be what would have been HE in England, yes. But now that they've been absorbed into sort of national NHS setup, it's harder to get some of those individual costs. Similarly, we're looking at NES in Scotland. And then from running a special health authority, national special health authority, we're also looking at DHCW, because in terms of some of the sort of back office functions, it's probably worth looking at that as well. So at the moment, we're trying to get that data in a way that it's meaningful, which is not easy to do, but that's what we want to do, so that we can have a sensible look at particularly some of the corporate functions, but also some of the programs that we run that are similar. Because obviously bear in mind that we have slightly different functions to NES in Scotland, and also what was HE in England as well. So it's making sure we're comparing apples and apples. Okay.
And the other point, Chair, if I may, on the basis that 80% of our costs relate to commission, the costs associated with that, I think paragraph 16 is so important and well noted. And that is, in terms, therefore, of our function as an organisation, it is to provide a workforce for the future and ensure that we've got appropriate commission numbers. And I use the word caution with this, because once we start getting into conversations around cost savings associated with commission numbers, then that becomes very uncomfortable. And I think that paragraph, in all fairness, does note that we need to be careful because, again, our ability either to return money, which ideally we should be doing to us, is predicated on other providers, fill rates, etc., etc. And I think I just wanted to highlight that from an independent member perspective. We've got to be very cautious about associating those two elements together.
Good point, John. Any other comments or questions? I think John's put his finger on the really important piece here, which is our role in providing future workforce for the NHS in Wales, and that we have to make sure that we continue to do that to the very best of our abilities, and that is our priority. Yeah.
I mean, I would just add to John's comments, because I agree. I think in some ways it's important that we are seen as if an investment in education and training, or investment in developing our workforce will actually deliver greater sustainability in the NHS. And actually, probably shouldn't have split that around.
Yes.
And say that actually by investing in the right areas, and this is where understanding the impact and the value of everything that we do to the wider system becomes even more important. So absolutely agree.
Well, thank you for the report, Jeff. Really helpful and important observations contained therein. Colleagues, we note the auditor's progress report and we note the review of cost improvement arrangements with tax. So,
Just to say that Jeff, Jeff's going to be leaving now.
okay, thank you for coming to present that, Jeff. Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, return now to procurement. And welcome, Deborah. Can I ask you?
Of course. So procurement report is between the 12th of June this year and the 10th of October. So during this time, we'd like to report there's been 5 single quotation actions, 2 single tender actions, 6 contract extensions which were compliant and in the original terms of the contract. There were 2 change control notices which sat outside of the original terms of the contract, but they were allowable under procurement rules. And we had 2 file notes, which of course are those that were carried out without any procurement involvement. So the addendum to the report actually contains the specifics on each one. As you'll note from the procurement action, we are involved with each of these departments. My team do work with them to make sure that these things don't occur again. And in some instances, we are in the process of setting up contracts and frameworks to capture this for next time. And it's a bit of a short report for me. So if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. It's actually rather good that it's getting shorter, isn't it?
It is. Considering it's such a long period this time in terms of reporting, the numbers are significantly lower.
Which is good news. Colleagues, any questions for Deborah? I was wondering, let me find the page number for you. Page 3 of the detailed report.
Yes.
Has 2 pharmacy matters. And
yeah.
They're basically sole suppliers.
They are, and these have actually been subject to what we call a VEET notice. So these are the placements for undergraduate pharmacy programs. They are currently the only ones in Wales who can provide this. I've been informed by the department that Bangor will also come online next year, but at the moment Cardiff and Swansea are the only ones who are able to provide this service. So due to the amount, this was obviously signed off internally within HEIW and then by the procurement director. This then went to note to the minister, and we then published a VEET notice which informs the market what we are about to do before the contracts are awarded, and it gives a period of challenge so the market can come back to us and any providers put their hands in the air to say, actually, we can provide this service, it should be tendered, and then we'd of course follow that route. That didn't happen. The VEET passed without any challenge, so the contracts were then awarded.
That's good. So we can take comfort that that was handled appropriately.
Yes, absolutely.
Jack, can I just clarify? My understanding of that is actually consequential of our commissioning process. So we commission those two providers
Yeah.
to deliver the programme. The consequence of that would then be the need for us to fund the placement places. That's how I read it.
So these are undergraduate places.
Yes.
So we don't fund the undergraduate places, we fund the placements attached to them. And this was subject of a business case with Welsh Government probably about 3 years ago, I think. And it was part of an expanding business case, which is, I think Deborah has pointed out, the places being expanded to Bangor.
Thank you, that's helpful. Any further questions? No? Thank you, Deborah, much appreciated. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so we note that report for assurance. Next, we move on to the Counter Fraud Progress Report, and your first one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, first thing I say, probably noticed that Gareth, the previous manager, left at the end of August, start of September, so I took over from there. So as we move through the report, I won't go through it all in detail, but in relation to the days that have been provided, even though Gareth left at the start of September, it is slightly up on this quarter to that period, mainly because of all the work we do with the universities around this time when they start, and quite a lot towards across there, so that's where that's up. We hope to fill the space that's been left by me moving into Gareth's space. Hopefully by the 4th of January, interviews next week, so fingers crossed that won't take too long. We've continued with all our maintenance and digital packages, which everyone should be able to access through SharePoint to see our SharePoint pages and details on there. We've probably touching on what Glyn spoke about earlier about the change in e-learning and awareness activity. So there were 2 corporate induction sessions that we did hold, but no one was in attendance to those, which is the issues that we were previously having, and the same e-learning figures there show only 6 members of staff, which is low. However, obviously with the new system that we've got in place, we've had some very good engagement from all the directorates. So this will be kind of rejigged next time to show just overall awareness and the compliance that we have. So it'll all be on ESR, so that will go up. We've done 10 sessions with the students over this period, reaching just over 1,000 students. In addition to those, we have now been to Aberystwyth and done that, and I think Cardiff is the only one that's outstanding still to be done. There have been a couple of bulletins and alerts and information bulletins, all of them being circulated as necessary, and checks made to make sure that there's no risk or loss to HAW. NFI is coming back around. Everything should be signed off in the system, and I believe end of December, just before Christmas, it's the planned release date for the new matches. So and more on that in future. There have been 5 referrals made to ourselves, a number in relation to the intelligence bulletins, and that's how we report that. Nothing has been brought to our attention that required escalation to any investigation or formal investigation of any fraud, and there have been no payments to salary. That's the report. If there are any questions.
To see the new system around salary payments. Be very helpful.
Yes, it should, and the new overpayment policy, I think, is now coming to force now. Agreed, or nearly, right? Yes. But yeah, the dashboard has been there for a while. Anything that goes over the threshold, 5,000 3 months, will come to us to review. We haven't had anything come across from HAW significant overpayment.
Which is good news.
Yes, very good news.
Okay, so thank you, Henry, and we note the report for assurance. Really pleased, as I said earlier, to see the increasing engagement in the way it's releasing. Let us move on now to the report on losses and special payments.
This is the standing report we bring to each committee to outline the loss and special payments. In this current report comes from 1st of April 2022 to 9th September 2024, only because there are overpayments from previous years. Currently, at the 9th of September, there was just over £10,000 outstanding. We've since recovered nearly 5,000 of that, so there's just over 5,000 outstanding, and we continue to seek recovery of those either through our internal normal process and a number have been referred to external companies or on that. So essentially that's the current position.
It's really good actually to see the trend in overpayments is actually heading downwards. Long way to continue.
Yeah, they say the number of procedures in place and the sort of support this now, which is really helpful and highlights early if we can react as we need to.
And are you optimistic that we will get all the money back?
Well, actually more difficult, but they say we've got external companies supporting us back in their channel. So ultimately, I hope so. Yes.
Good. Any other questions on this report? No. Thank you, Martin. We note that report for information. Next, we have a further update on the review of standing financial instructions.
Thanks very much. The reason this is verbal and there isn't paper is that we had planned to update the standard financial instructions on the basis that there would be changes to the procurement regulations in the NHS. But in September, there was a written statement from the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care to inform us that those regulations have been delayed, and in fact, the legislation that the UK government is planning to bring in, I believe, has been delayed until about February 2025. So the regulations that were going to be made in Wales were related to the changes in procurement legislation in England. So because of that, we don't actually have a confirmed date for when Welsh Government plan to lay those regulations, but as and when they do, we will then need to reflect that in the standing financial instructions. And it's broadly around how we select potential providers of healthcare services. So we're fairly peripheral to it because we commission educational training and not healthcare generally, but it affects us on the margin, so we would still need to probably update our SFIs as and when that happens. Hence the verbal update.
Thank you, Glenn. I think that's helpful. And it seems the committee is cited on it, and we're waiting developments, of course. So we move on to agenda item 2.7, the annual review of financial control procedures. Is that you, Martin?
It is again. Thank you very much, Chair. After the accounts, I think this is our second biggest bulk of papers you bring to the committee every year. I do apologise every year, but it is an important piece of work we do. Currently, we have 13 financial control procedures that translate the high level of guidance and legislation into our operational rules that apply to all staff. When we were formed, we adopted FCPs from a range of sources, copied and begged and borrowed really, and over time we refined them to match how we work or how we need to work and adapt to our unique way of working. We've reviewed them annually since formation to reflect any changes in legislation or audit reviews that come out or our own internal processes. And the papers today are the outcome of this current year's review. I appreciate there are a lot of documents attached in the appendices. Appendix 1 summarises the changes that I am proposing, and then appendices 2 to 7 are the track changes documents which will show where the changes have been made. I'm not proposing to go through each of those in detail, but obviously can answer any specific questions on those if we need to. I think what is evident through the current review is that they are very well developed now, and there are probably some minor changes to reflect particular instances. So I am asking to change the review process going forward in terms of a more risk-based approach. Essentially, this is a huge piece of work with the extended audit and audit period and just trying to get back to normal. It is a significant piece of work, so I would rather try to phase these out on the risk-based approach going forward if we can. So on page 3 of the report, I think it is, I've set out sort of proposal how we do this going forward. So I suggest on a quarterly basis, my team would do a high-level summary of each FCP to work out if they are in need of an update, and if that's the case, that will be done straight away. Where recommendations come up from any internal or external audit review, we will then also do those straight away. And then I'm suggesting each FCP will be subject to review at least every 3 years, just to make sure it is covered as part of the process. There are some benefits from this. I think the reviews will take place a bit quicker. We won't wait until the annual cycle. It will spread out the workload of my team. As I said, does cause some problems. And I think it would be smaller reports to come to the audit committee when changes are central. So I think it's probably a bit more of we tinkering now with the FCPs because they are so well developed. I think this will give us a bit more focus, allow us to make the changes quicker, and hopefully, just make sure that the systems are in place. So I'm asking the committee today to approve the changes to FCPs 2, 3, 7, 10, 12, and 14. To note there's no amendments to the remainder, and asking to approve the amended review process as set out on page 3.
Questions or points of detail on any of the procedures? Okay. So, as an audit committee, we need to be sure there are FCPs. They are. In fact, the new process that is proposed here should actually give us more assurance that where changes are needed, they can be made more quickly. And so I think colleagues will agree that this makes good sense as a resolution to the process. So, we are asked to approve proposed amendments, to note that number have been reviewed, but no amendments proposed, and we are happy to approve the revised review process for FCPs. So thank you for thinking about it and proposing it, and we work that way going forward. Thank you, Martin. Right, so we move on to the update on information governance toolkits. And I think this must be you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in 2023-24, we submitted the IG toolkit towards the end of the financial year. Within that submission, we met the minimum expectation for all categories, and we exceeded the expectations for 10 of the 11 categories. The IG toolkit. So the area we did not exceed was the publication of DPIAs. So one area exceeded. The ICO does expect the organisation to respond to that process, but if they have DPIA in place, and it asks the organisation to consider publishing DPIA. So following the IG toolkit submission, reviewed whether we would consider publish the DPIAs we have. And following that review, we've decided not to publish DPIAs. And a recommendation was taken to IMG in September and supported by the group. The team recognises that transparency builds trust, but also felt there was risk both in terms of the information that may be visible within DPIAs and just gives on professional processing and processing it, but also they would have significant impact on the team workload as well, as the requirement to publish DPIA is not a legal requirement. I think we're in every position where we continue to monitor the situation, so the recommendation from the ICO to change. But as I say, we have agreement that there's no need to publish HIW.
That workload issue, is it because the DPIAs would have to be redacted before publication?
Essentially, yes, it's the information that needs to be removed from DPIs and for translation to make them the word publishable inappropriate for publishing as well, and then the need to maintain on top of that as well with the resourcing out.
Any questions or comments?
So, I recognise what the paper is saying, that the dichotomy between what it says around transparency and the importance to build the open, that builds trust, etc., balanced against, well, there's risk in that as well. So there's a little bit contradictory. I note the decision that has been made, and the reason for that. It just left me asking the question. I can understand where we are and why we are here. How does that map against other organisations in Wales in terms of what they're doing, and therefore are we an outlier?
We definitely out in the paper, but there's been significant amount of research into what other organisations do. We're certainly not an outlier. We are aligned to the Wales organisations that are practicing Wales as well.
So nobody else publishes them?
No, I'm one of those.
No, I'm not saying or suggesting that justifies our position, but it's interesting to see where is this an issue in terms of the toolkit on the tool, the dashboard, that is an expectation, yeah, nobody's doing it. Okay, that's fine.
Sounds as if there's been a reasonably consistent assessment of the risk attached to publication versus the benefits.
Yes, and we researched in Wales, but also tried to find out in England as well. It's a very similar position across the board, so it's quite a common approach. That's not to publish them.
I guess given the level of risks around cyber security,
That's the worry.
that must play strongly into making that decision.
Yes.
So I think, colleagues, we understand why the decision has been made. We understand that it will be kept under review and should the external environment change, i.e. it becomes a legal requirement, then we'll have to revisit and review, and you will continue to monitor that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we note the paper for information and the decision not to publish DPIAs at this time. So we also have a key issues report, and that's you. Right.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, jyst i gyda'r esboniad fawr yn ysgrifennu. Felly, adroddiad ydy o'n nodi gwaith y grŵp llywodraethu gwybodaeth a rheolyn gwybodaeth, sef yr IMG. Papur sicrwydd ydy hon, ac mae'n rhoi gwaith grŵp IMG. Rhaid i cyfarfod y cynhalwydd ar y pedwaredd adroddiad o'n Ysmedi. Wrth gwrs, byddai'n cynnig atal awr i darllen y adroddiad, ond byddai'n dynnu'r sylwch chi at yr elfennau canlynol. Yn cyntaf, mi wnaeth y grŵp ystyried cynnwys y adroddiad a byddi'r gwybodaeth. Byddwch yn nodi'r adroddiad bod yna 8 achos o broliad fel y data wedi cael ei gyfnodi. A roedd sydd bydd yn ail wedi gael ei adrodd at y swyddfa Consil y Gwybodaeth. Wrth yna bapur ar y swyddfa maes yna hyn. Y sesiwn digon online. Da ni hefyd nodi y cynnydd o ran y cynllun llywodraethu gwybodaeth ac mae 14% wedi cwblhau yn ystod broses blynedd 2. Mi wnaeth grŵp hefyd nodi ar dros i'r gyfnod ein bod ni heb dderbyn unrhyw cais di-sar ac o ran y ceisiadau roedd wybodaeth derbynwyd 16 y cais FOI yn ystod y cyfnod ac wnaethon ni ymateb i 13 ar amser o'r 3 cais lle nath ni fynd sydd i'r amser ymateb roedd trefnu oherwydd yn achos 2 cais cymlethdod yn y cais ac o ran yr un sy'n weddill oherwydd problem gyda cael gafel ar y data y gwylio'n system Audit ydy.
Daniel? Colleagues, any question? Looking at page 5 of 5. The paragraph starts on bottom of page 4 and relates to cyber security. It flags that the deployment of new security monitoring service has been delayed.
So just to check before we respond, is that a question you'd be more comfortable responding in closed session as it relates to cyber security? Yes.
Okay, so we make a note to come back to that in the closed. I was also going to raise a question around the phishing simulation. Will we also deal with that in the closed? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We therefore note the content of the report for assurance with a couple of matters to be dealt with in closed. We'll finish that off. Okay, colleagues, we are doing well. And we've been going for just over an hour, so we should have a brief break. 10 minutes. So if we could reconvene at 11:47. Thank you very much. We stop recording.
Just checking, are we? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we start on that. And we move to item 2.10, the policy update report. This is you, David?
It is, before iawn yn y cyfrifiad. Felly, da ni yn ystyried ein policy risk yn blynyddol, mae un o'r polisi sydd angen cael ei gymeradwyo gan y bwrdd. Byddwch yn nodi o'r adroddiad ein bod ni yn awgrymu un newid sylweddol i'r polisi risg eleni. Ac mae'r diweddariad hynny yn ymwneud o gwmpas gyflwyno mwy o wybodaeth o gwmpas sut i asesu'r risg. Byddwch yn gwybod bod yn sgorio o'n debygol ar risg i ddigwydd o'n sgorio o'n uned debygol ac hefyd yn sgorio effaith risg o'n sgorio o'n uned debygol. Beth da ni'n gwneud ydy mwy ceisio sicrhau bod y sgorio o'n just yn sy'n bosib yn ei darparu mwy o wybodaeth i bosib o gyfiro o ran sut i asesu'r sgorio. Felly, da ni'n gofyn y sgorio dda i'r pwyllgor i gefnogi argymhellion ac gofyn hefyd i'r bwrdd sydd yn cymeradwyo y newidiadau hefyd polisi risg yn ei gyfarfod i'r ymwys. Oh, I've jumped the course.
I was just about to say, I think you just asked us
I have.
about the risk register.
This is, oh, sorry, this is, I have jumped the course. Sorry, this is the policy update the policy. So I have the one with the apologies.
Shall we continue to discuss the
correct item?
Please.
Yeah, apologies. So, sorry, so the process switch to both languages. So, yes, this is an update with regards to the policy and policies. Felly, da ni'n darparu diweddariad mewn â lle da ni o ran yeah. I've just lost my tracks, so just bear with me a second. Yeah, sorry. So, dyma diweddariad sydd wedi cyfri o'r adroddiad asesu strwythuredig derbyn gan Chwilio Cymru llynedd. Dwi'n rwan yn darparu adroddiad i'r pwyllgor yn blynyddol un a lle ydyn ni o ran diweddaru polisïau sydd angen cael ei adolygu yn blynyddol. Byddwch yn nodi ar hyn o bryd bod yna 12 o bolisïau sydd wedi methu hwnt i'r cyfnod adolygu. A bod polisi hynny wedi cael ei nodi mewn atodiad a gerdd yn papur. Dwi'n cymryd gan sawl fod aelodau wedi darllen y papur, ond byddwch yn nodi o'r atodiad bod yna gynllun yn ei le ar gyfer gwneud yn siŵr bod y polisi sydd wedi mynd dros y cyfnod adolygu bod yna gynllun yn ei le i sicrhau y bydd y polisi hynny yn cael ei diweddaru yn trydydd chwarter o'r flwyddyn. Byddwch yn nodi hefyd bod yna broses yn ei le gan y tîm llywodraethiant o ran ysgolfa, staff a sarrannau un o'r pryd maen nhw angen adolygu polisïau ac yn erys yn allu'n gyson yn y torch yn angen hynny. Felly, yn gofyn ysgwad yn dda, wrth gweithio ysgwad yna yn nodi as panel sydd yn ddiheirio yn gyfeirio at yr oedran agor o'n gynnar.
Colleagues, any questions or observations? No.
I think the only sort of observation which I know you covered in the plan is the assurance that the policies that we're outstanding and investigate. Get off the evidence and have that because I think that's actually seeing that as information. But is the original date of policy review being kept as is? or even with that as well, but just not spreadsheet.
It's so we keep the original dates, so those 12 policies, but that's on the basis of the original dates. And that's the plans to ensure that they are being, the updates are and reviews are being implemented. Exactly that's yes.
I wrote appendix one, which on the table that gives us assurance in terms of the plan for review approval. The majority of them have got clear dates. I'm a little bit unsure about the information asset policy. It's a little bit vague, and so that would be useful to have a timeline of completion. Similarly, the mobile phone policy, and similarly the agile working policy. There's a narrative there as to what's been done, but we do as a committee will know well, like the others, it'll be November is going to exec. So it would be useful in terms of assurance that we've got dates against each of them.
Thank you. Well, that might take that on board. I'm going to feed that back to the officers.
So, this report is coming to us as an annual report. And it arises from a recommendation of the grades that the committee should gain assurance that policies are maintained and reviewed and kept up to date. So currently process has changed, hasn't it? I see from the paper that there's not going to be an automatic review. There's going to be a risk-based review.
There's a risk-based review based on whether there's been all reviews undertaken. So that process was approved. I'll go back here in March.
So in our annual report, we should expect to see several groups of policies, if you like. Those that have been reviewed and need change. Those that have been reviewed and the risk analysis is that it doesn't need change. Those that are identified as needing review and haven't been. I think those are the categories that we should probably be seeing in an annual report going forward. And what we have here is a list of policies which are in that third category. They should have been reviewed and they haven't been. Yeah. And so we now have an annual report which is here for assurance. But how can we take assurance?
So actually, that's not quite right. I think I'm thinking back. So the reason this report is here is at the request of the strict assessment last year, which was asking for an update against actually where we were regards to the policies that have gone. But I take on board your point. I think we're doing this anyway, and I think that adds more value to this report. So I take on board that's really clear.
We're in a position where we've got a number of policies which are at time and which need review. Will we get an interim report going forward when those have been reviewed? Those are the appendix. What's the list?
An interim report just outlining where we are with regards, just confirming that those.
We need to have assurance that those in the appendix
yes.
Are actually what's said here as being planned to be done. Has been done.
Yes. Okay.
So when will we get that? Surely we don't need to wait another year before we actually find out whether that work has been completed.
We could either bring a report to the next meeting on committee, or we could circulate an update to expectations that they would be completed, so we could circulate an email December, or we could provide further things to that is in February.
I think further report at the meeting in February would serve to close off the loop from the committee so that we can gain assurance that we've caught up on the work which had fallen behind And there's then a system in place which makes sure that we don't get back into that.
I would say there is a system in place.
Yeah.
But it's obviously we're behind those.
Exactly. And what we'd like to be is actually very good. Yes. Okay. Lovely. Yeah, so that is. Would you like to introduce this paper?
Yes, please. Yes. So this is the risk paper rather than policies. So apologies for that. So ar hyn o bryd mae'n un ar ddeg risg ar y gofrestr. Risg bod un ar ddeg yma yn goch yn Cymraeg ac un yn gwyrth ac mae tri risg yma yn newydd. O ran 5 risg sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n goch, mae un yn ymwneud â sefyll diogelwch. Mae 2 yn ymwneud gyda cynllun addysg a chyfforiad neu'r T. Felly mae un risg o'r IDT yn ymwneud gyda risg fydd y cyllideb yn nesaf ar ei fewn ar ei lefel ac yn enw. Mae risg arall o'n IDT yn ymwneud â risg o'r mynydwiaeth ddim yn sefyll Canolfan Cymru. Mae pedwaredd risg yn ymwneud gyda straeon gyddol am position associates. Ac mae risg yn ymwneud gyda noddau ac capacity yn y tîm data a ddadansoddi. O ran un risg web, mae hwnna yn ymwneud gyda pecyn gwrsariaeth a bod hynny dod yn llai deiliadol oherwydd yr argyfwng costau a ddatblygiad. Yn amlwg mae'r sefyllfa newydd o ran polisi llywodraeth a'r gwasanaeth yn hynny yn golygu bod ni wedi ail-asesu risg yn wyrdd. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolhaig y gwyllgor i nodi'r adroddiad a da ni hefyd yn gofyn bod y risg gyda'r pecyn gwrsariaeth yn cael dysgu oddi ar ystod of countries.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to risk value with 10, when raising every activity, do we have a current position talks about September with down nursery and going to October. So are we in a position that we know more information and therefore those risks can be considered or not?
Do you want me to answer that one? So we met with Welsh Government in September as a result of that meeting and a couple of other sort of correspondence email discussion with Welsh Government. We've been asked to identify separately the funding and the plan around the education training plan. But given that some of the funding arrangements are also intertwined with some of the leadership programs that we're running, some of the other workforce priorities that we've been taking forward, we're currently in discussion with them about how we make sure that the education training plan can be considered by the Cabinet Secretary, but we still manage to maintain a funding stream for the other work that we're doing. We've been asked to do a piece of work which sort of breaks that out for Welsh Government colleagues, which we're hoping to complete by the end of this week. Effectively, what that will do is it will isolate the education training plan funding and the forecast expenditure. It will then identify the other funding commitments that we've got in place, particularly those that are current funding commitments. So a lot of these are actions that came out of the NWIC, the National Workforce Implementation Plan, and historically we've, I suppose, through implicit agreement with Welsh Government, we've funded those in large part from underspends on the commissioning for education training. That's why it's more complex. So we're looking to identify those recurrent funding commitments separately, and then it also asks us to look at potentially what areas there are that we could make choices around next year. So if there was a choice about whether we continue some of those other funding commitments, what that would look like. So they've asked for those three pieces of information. As you can imagine, it's quite complex to pull all of that together. So we're able to complete help with this week. I want to share with the executive team so that we've got a sort of common view on particularly some of the areas where there are choices. We'll share that with Welsh Government, and then plan will be to meet with them as soon as possible to actually take them through it, because it is quite a complex area to look at. As a result of that, then we should be in a position where they can then hopefully put advice out to the Cabinet Secretary around the education training plan. So we're looking to try and do that in the next couple of weeks. And the sooner they're able to do that, obviously, the sooner we can then potentially get a decision around what level of funding we're likely to receive for next year's education training plan, and be able to then start to correspond with HEIs and providers around commissioning that, because then hopefully starts to address those two different risks.
Well, that's helpful, Chair. So essentially, the risks stay the same.
It's still,
That's the context. My second question is in relation to risk 11. It's under rent, and I can understand that 2 months ago. My question is, are we saying that we're in exactly the same position? But my interpretation is that we're not, that we're in a more favourable position, still at risk, but things have changed, but yet our risk has remained exactly the same. So I just want to know if there's something that the exec is aware of that keeps this PA risk as it is.
So I think I don't know the progress in that. I think that the basis upon you're making that suggestion is specifically around the fact that with regards to this year's physician associates, that was largely mitigated, and that's correct. The concern that we have is more generic around there are still issues around negative stories arising around physician associates, and that's still causing us a challenge for the future. So I take the point with regards to this year. I think we've done an incredible job to ensure that the jobs are in place for those who are graduating this year. But with regards to the broader issue of physician associates and negative stories, that's still a very worrying situation.
Just one observation on risk 1, understanding you sort of noted that we've got a plan in place. What was the timeline around that? Because I know the good job in the audit and move on, but what's the implementation? You've got to understand our timeline.
Yes, I'll give you a general reply, maybe nothing about my staff there. I think the position with regards to cyber security, I think it's sort of like into an arms race. So while we are constantly looking to improve our defences, we know that there are external agents who are constantly improving their ability to attack using a wide range of resource and tactics. So I think that it's highly likely that this particular risk would be anything other than red, which reflects the fact that we have this arms race in place. That's it.
Well, that would, we have to constantly try and keep up, essentially, and part of the plan is about raising awareness and increasing organisational knowledge around threats and defence being in place, but also about the education training of our own teams as well, so that it continues to move forward with technological awareness as well. So it's a challenging space.
I think those hobbies reduce slightly. What about the implementation plan? I know this drafted and implemented. What's the timeline?
So there's an annual plan around cybersecurity, which aligns to our ITP objective to each year. We have activities that are planned, we track that through our quarterly deliverable reporting. We're on target with the activities we said we would be doing. There's a couple of things that are mentioned in the IG update report, which there's a bit delayed in the forecast, but it's this ongoing activity to keep up to date.
Just one observation from me, which is relation to risk 14, which is the funding crisis in HE. Just to note that that's currently assessed as under, but here we're going to be keeping that under review because it's potential impact on our activity.
Jen, can I get back to risk 13, please?
Yes, you may.
So I note this as a new risk. The risk being if HIW is not able to influence the direction of the programme of introduction of the RNA, the risk associated. Not quite sure what that means. Is that saying that we're not going to be in a position to influence the timelines? Because, or does that refer to the actual nature of the programme and its introduction? Because the timelines, I thought, unless they changed, should be September 2025. But I was a little bit taken aback by that new risk.
Yeah, so because the concern that we have here is that we, as an organisation, have been committed to programme where we're not fully in control of the situation. So the project was set by Welsh Government concern that we have in terms of the overall objectives that need to be achieved. HIW doesn't have control of that. There are large elements outside of our control, and that's the concern that we have. That's reflected in the bit started to that, but that's the concern that we have.
So why is that different to any other programme that we don't have influence on? That's set by HIs. The nature of programmes and the delivery of programmes and the QA of programmes is there are regulatory bodies. Our role is commissioning of those programmes. So why are we concerned about influencing the nature of the programme?
I think I'll take it back, but it's to do with it's not HIs. It's been set by Welsh Government rather than.
Yeah, I accept that, but other programmes we wouldn't apply that risk to. But we are in terms of RNA. Because
I'm conscious I'm here as an observer.
Please help us.
And so there are because this is a new role, there are a number of elements of the project. So for example, in relation to existing roles and managing, how those elements of the project are going to go and managed. There's also an issue related to the legislation and regulations. And so there's some concern about the timeline for all the work that has been done to enable this programme to be implemented in Wales. So there's discussions about the rate at which progress can be made. And September 25 was an awful lot of work that applications have taken to allow that to be implemented within that time scale. So release the time scale associated with it.
Thank you. That's been a helpful discussion. So, colleagues, we note the contents of the report for assurance. We approve the removal of risk 5 risk register. We now are in this late. So, can we assume that colleagues have read this and pick out only the very key facts that we put forward? Starting with the review of risk management policy.
Yes, the wedi cael rhag glas o'r cyflwyniad yn barod yn Brunei. Felly mi fyddai'n sbio yn o'r sydd mae'r reporters yn cael ei ystyried yn blynyddol. Da ni yn awgrymu un newid cynnal sylfaen papur eleni. Y beth da ni wedi gwneud ydy cyflwyno mwy o ddaminoldeb, arweiniad a sut sydd ohoni beth ffaith tebygolwydd o'n risg ysgolion os o'n hynna 5. Felly da'n gofyn sôn mae lot o bod i ystyried yn sylwiad ac i gefnogi'r yswygiad yna ac hefyd ar gyfer y bwrdd hefyd yn cyfnewsol sy'n cael yn ystafell.
So, any comments, questions, colleagues?
The changes in the health policy. So
And I think it will make these the changes will make for greater consistency. So we have considered the policy and proposed amendments as detailed, and as you've heard, we support the amendments and recommend that the amended policy be taken to the November board form of approval. Next, audit recommendations. Oscar.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Jack. Felly mae'r traciwr archwilio yn cael cofnod o'r argymhellion gan un archwilwyr. Ar hyn o bryd mae 24 o argymhellion ar y traciwr. O'r rhai mae 15 argymhelliad wedi dod gan ein archwilwyr mewnol. Mae 7 yn asesu'n goch a 8 yn wyrdd. O ran y 7 sydd wedi cael asesu'n goch, mae rhaid yn gwneud gyda argymhellion o ran ariannu craidd gyda hyfforddiant brylliaeth. O ran y 9 archwiliad argymhelliad nhw'n gwneud gan archwilio allanol. Mae 4 yn goch y 3 yn wyrdd, ac gorau goch mae'n ymwneud gyda adroddiad cyfrifol ac hefyd gyda cynllunio gweithlu. Wedyn, da ni'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda fod gyda'r nodi'r papur cynnydd ac hefyd cymeradwyo bod yr argymhellion sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n wyrdd a felly wedi cael ei cwblhau o'r rhain cael ei tynnu oddi ar y traciwr.
Any comments or questions, colleagues?
Is it a simultaneous on some of these and a number of the core financial systems and the external audit hasn't been completed? This has been early September, so obviously we've done half since then. So when it remains incomplete and when it's partially complete, the remainder have been completed in the time.
That's helpful. You just take the words out of my mouth. No, it's better they come out of yours. So clearly we need to, as a committee, to keep an eye on timeliness of completion and recommendations. Accepted the point that Martin's just made. But we will be as we move forward. So we note the reports. We've considered the progress against recommendations, and we approve that the recommendations on the audit package have been assessed as completed and given a green rating, be withdrawn from the tracker. And I think probably where we stand today. Next, we move on to the review of declarations on interest register.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, da ni'n mae pwyllgor yn ystyried y gofrestr datgan-buddiannau yn blynyddol. Mae wrth gwrs yn meddwl bod full staff yn datgan-buddiannau. Da ni yn gofyn 4 categori staff i gwblhau ffurflen y datgan-buddiannau yn blynyddol. Rhain gwybod, aelodau'r grŵp dirprwy a deoniaid, sef G, roedd y staff sy'n rhoi cyllideb yn cyntaf eleni. Da ni hefyd wedi gofyn y staff sydd gyda gradd wyth neu uwch hefyd yn gwblhau gofrestr. Felly, da ni'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda bod yn nodi y gofrestr bod yn nodi bod o'n cynnwys gwybodaeth ar aelodau'r bwrdd a DDG a bydd ni'n gofyn yn cyhoeddi'r gwybodaeth ar ein wefan yma jyst gofrestr a bydd yn nodi os yna.
This is an annual process. Any questions or comments?
Just wanted to note, I actually come up with a load of orange things and new packets. Is that right?
Thank you very much for all that we've said before.
Yes, so that's updating in action.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay.
So, Chair, one comment. One of the audit recommendations last year was in relation to board members who leave during the year, and was this an annual update? Do we ask owners as if their declarations are interesting because it feeds into the range account. So just that we had the process. Thank you.
So we know the report and the appended declarations and just register for information and about the amendment which Martin has just suggested. Good. 2.15 review of just hospitality and sponsorship register. Audit.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. So happy rhyw nodi. Da ni'n gofyn wrth gwrs staff sgofnodi profion lletygarwdd i ryw ail nawdd. Felly dwi'n gofyn wrth gofyn nodi yn y profiad o'r safle.
So we are assured there's a process in place and we note the two declarations. Any questions, colleagues? Thank you. So we note the report and appendix 1 for information. 2.16 committee effectiveness action plan progress.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Dwi'n nodi bod mae'n dabwys o fewn amser, felly mae'n cymryd y gant ahon bod pawb wedi darllen yr adroddiad. Da ni'n gofyn sgwrs bod pwyllgor yn nodi'r ysgrifennydd yn erbyn y cynllun byddwch chi'n gweld bod ni wedi cwblhau yr argymhellion o'r cynllun eleni a dweud bod ni'n y broses o weithredu'r amcanion hynny. Felly byddwn ni'n broses o hynny adrodd.
Any questions or comments? We have a plan in place. There are some quite detailed comments outlining the progress against that plan. So we note progress made against the actions agreed in the 23-24 self-assessment action plan. We have two items for information. One is the forward work programme, which I find helpful in structuring our thinking about how the committee is going to proceed through the year. So thank you for including that. And it is for a note, unless anyone has any questions. And then we have the ECQC annual report 23-24. We saw this at board last month. It's here so that we can look at it with our audit and insurance brains. And are there any points that people want to raise, having read it with through those particular lenses? No? In which case, we note the ECQC annual report submitted to the board for assurance. And we note that it's here for our information. I've not been informed of any other business. The date of our next meeting is after Christmas.
Yes.
Thursday, 6th of February 2025. And so I'll bring this meeting to a close. I just want to thank everyone for their input and for the reports. I find it really helpful way of getting under the skin of the organisation and thinking about how we can do things even better. So thank you all. I now have to read this out.
Please.
In accordance with the provision of Section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, it shall be resolved that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the latter part of the meeting on the grounds that it would be prejudicial to the public interest due to the confidential nature of the business transacted. This section of the meeting is to be held in private session. Diolch yn fawr pawb. You're on.